So hello and welcome to the New Gig podcast. I'm your host, Glen Hodgson, and today I'm delighted to be joined by the head of public policy for the Nordics and Delivery Services at Bolt, Mr. David Mothander. How are you doing, David? You well?
It's interesting times we live in.
It certainly is, and I think this would be a great opportunity to basically give us a little bit of a potted history of yourself, but also Bolt, to let everyone know about what you do, what the plans are for 2022 as well.
Myself, honestly, Bolt is probably much more interesting, but very short about myself. I joined the telecom industry late 80s, beginning 90s with the hope and view that telecom was the future. And then it took like 10 years till I realized that actually it wasn't. It was digitization, which was supposed to fill the world with meaning. So I did that for 8 or 9 years. And then I came to realization that it is actually mobility, which is the true quest and call for us all. So that's where I am right now. Bolt is it's a European company first. And I think that carries a lot of importance, especially when we talk about the issues we're going to discuss today, platform issues. Born out of Tallinn, born out of Estonia, 13 years ago, founded by two brothers, Martin and Markus Willig, who both are still active in the company. Initially a ride-hailing company, and ride-hailing it's the sort of app taxi challenging old incumbent taxi monopolies. Yeah. And then quickly expanding to more verticals. And today we have e-scooters being a very much debated vertical. We have e-bikes following in the trail of e-scooters. We have carpools. We have food deliveries. And just as of a couple of weeks ago, and actually yesterday in Stockholm, we now have launched Bolt Market, which is retail sales with the help of couriers with quick delivery. So we have a number of verticals expanding very quickly, but all of them are really based on the same concept of the platform, which is we can connect supply and demand very quickly and very swiftly.
So
that's the short story.
That's the short story, but linked to efficiencies, making things easier, but also the matching services between the people who want to work and the companies and organizations who want skills and talent. And this is sort of a crucial thing in that, the platform and the technology in between is allowing this to happen and to be able to hopefully gain and produce opportunities and benefits for everyone within this process.
It's sort of, if you would have listened to the debate some 10 years ago, there were those saying that everything would be online, everything would be digital. And we sort of lived under the presumption that the real world would disappear. And that is not true, of course. Yeah. So I think what we see now is the emergence of industries which sort of match the real world with the digital world. And in our case, people or consumers have got accustomed and attuned to, first of all, full information. Yeah. They have access to all of the world's information, and thereby they can also make very informed decisions. And they've also got attuned to the sort of speed that comes with that. They have an expectation of quick delivery. You do not order food delivered by post 3 days later. You want it at your doorstep within 10 or 15 minutes. And what we do is we can match that quick expectation and quick demand. I think we do that by being extremely flexible and agile. Right. And flexible in all different directions, and working with all our partners, and also in the way we have operated our platform. And this is where we are matching a digital behavior from a consumer and business side, right? And where we are transforming it, and we are confronting old structures. I mean, if we go back to what I think you want to talk about today, is sort of what's happening around the regulation around platforms. To me, at least, this is very much a transformation where we are provoking old ways of that. Well, this is the way we've always done it. Why do we need to do it in a different way? Well, the simple answer to that is there is an expectation from businesses and consumers and employers and employees to actually modernize a little bit. And that's what we do, basically.
Well, you've segued beautifully into the crux of the discussion today about what's going on from a regulatory perspective, because with the opportunities, there comes the threats, and there seems to be a whole swathe of legislation and policy coming from the national level, but also at the European level from Brussels, in terms of what should we do with this new thing we're calling the sort of the future of work, or digitalization, or gig economy, platform economy. And it seems to be that the initiative is there to actually do something, but it seems to be not really fully understanding the changes that are underway, the evolution that's taking place, and also the way in which sort of companies operate through digitalization, but also the people who are wanting to work are actually sort of setting themselves up differently from the traditional 9 to 5, selling hours to one employer 5 days a week.
I think there are many facets to this problem. One, which I think we all need to remember, is that the platform economy and the business models based on it and the ecosystems we see now, they're no more than 2 or 3 years old.
Right.
And we are very quickly evolving, and we are learning, and we are developing.
Yeah.
And if ever, I think one could raise the question of, are we talking about premature regulation? I think this would be now, because premature regulation, which runs the risk of killing and stopping a business of evolution, which actually ought to be very sound and helpful for society, is not good. And we do not yet know, I think, enough, and there's no evidence, and there's not proper analysis of the consequences yet, and still we are rushing ahead with quite severe regulation. I think I'm not saying that is a reason enough to stop it, but I think it ought to at least lead us to a certain moment of consideration. Then you also have another angle, which is much of the platform business and the business models are an import to Europe from California. And the underlying social values doesn't necessarily look alike. And I think there are some fundamental social European values that we would do better to adhere to, rather than just push through an American model.
Right.
I think if you look at for example, if you look at the situation for couriers, and this is maybe critical against us as an industry, we ought to do more in involving them and introducing them into the social welfare system of our different countries and jurisdictions. So I think that's also. Then I think you said a very important thing. Thirdly, so far we haven't really heard the voices of the platform workers themselves.
Right.
We see very strong vocal others, but them who are really concerned, we ought to listen more to what their needs are and what their expectations are and what they actually want. And then as a final point, I think this whole debate and discussion, which is around a business phenomena and a business model which will deliver growth and jobs to Europe. This discussion is done in a very confrontative tone. And maybe that goes back to my point about question is, are we a little bit too early with trying to hit down with heavy regulation? I think we would all benefit from having a more open view on this and actually looking a little bit down into the evidence and the foundations, rather than just standing on the parapet and screaming very loud.
Exactly. And I think it is this is a tide that raises all boats. There's the opportunity to support job creation, to support growth and support opportunities, and particularly for groups that have maybe struggled in the past, young people, immigrants, as a way to get into the workforce. And as you say, it seems to be an opportunity to actually think about what's needed, as opposed to scream from some kind of ideological, particularly left-wing viewpoint that this is terrible, the world's coming to an end. Whereas at the point in time we are, if we're coming out of the pandemic, that's maybe a moot point, but certainly from a societal perspective, as well as an economic and an opportunity perspective, we've had such suffering over the past 2 and a bit years, we should be looking together to work and collaborate to be able to create the opportunities for the future, surely.
Well, I think we need to, because the way I think we would, on a matter of principle, agree with the Commission, European Commission, that there is a problem we need to address.
Yeah.
But I think we fundamentally disagree with the solution they have proposed.
Right.
And I think instead, it rather than drawing up the lines as you do now, with a trying to distinguish between employees and independent in the way that the presumption of employment is likely to work, that will only lead to companies not wanting to employ, withdrawing from that line in order not to jeopardize anything. And with withdrawing, I mean sort of stepping away from taking the initiatives and doing the stuff that they really ought to do in order to improve the situation of couriers. I think we all agree that a courier, we keep on talking about couriers, and the discussion is of course much wider than that, but they're a good example. Couriers benefit from taking part of the knowledge we have about work safety. They would knowledge from being assisted in securing a proper insurance coverage. They would benefit from more education. They would benefit from help in sort of getting proper vehicles, etc. There's like a number of things, that areas of development. But I'm fearing that when these areas of development at the same time are being used as requisites for distinguishing between and determining whether or not this is a presumption of employment or not, it would have the counter effect. What we know is that in Spain, you had a similar legislation of presumption of employment introduced.
Right.
The consequence of that was exactly this. The situation for the couriers worsened. In Spain, they even introduced a mechanism for couriers themselves to set the price, with the ambition of empowering couriers to set their own wages and new earnings. But the consequence was instead the opposite, that it became a race to the bottom. So it was actually bad for everyone. And also the consequence in Spain was that the possibility to have this flexible workforce was quite limited. And instead, platform companies had to hire. And when you hire fewer. So less people were actually employed and could make a living out of the platform industry than before. And I think that was also counter to what was expected. So we need to be we ought to be more in discussion, trying to develop this rather than being so confrontative and putting it to legislative measure, because it will go the wrong way otherwise.
Yeah, and I think that the decision makers and policy formers need to be able to think of this. They need to look at the lessons from recent history as well, and see what's worked, but more importantly, what hasn't worked, and the counterintuitive results that can come about need to be avoided. And it's really sort of having that proper dialogue with the operators, but also, as you say, with the workers. And so far, the discussions have taken place at a very high level with employers groups and the trade unions, but very few of them really have an understanding of how this works, but also what is the sort of the everyday hopes, fears, and wishes of the workers within this sector. This is a massive gap that exists, and can just be the sort of the recipe for bad legislation and as you were saying, unintended consequences, unless something's done and taken up quite quickly.
I mean, make no mistake, I am very aware that we as a platform company need to do more on many levels. I'll repeat that as many times as you want. One thing where we definitely could make more, try to find better ways, is you know the Swedish comic series Bamse?
Yes.
There's a saying in Bamse that if you are really, really strong, then you have to be really, really nice.
Yep.
Now, I would not argue that Bolt is really, really strong, but there's a sort of, if you look upon it, then of course an individual courier would not maybe have so much power to secure changes in the business model of a bigger platform. And one thing that we definitely need to improve and develop is, how do we provide the couriers and drivers and whatnot with a platform to talk with a joint voice two platforms.
Yes.
And how do we create it with the representation? Does it by necessity have to be the unions, or is there other way to do it? We have launched an initiative in Lithuania, Bolt, where we have helped create a courier and driver association, a foundation.
Right. Yeah.
Making very, very careful that we do not influence it or have any influence or any insight or anything like that. But with the hope that with this, maybe we can empower drivers and couriers to better be a dialogue partner with us. And we launched this in December, and I have high hopes that this would actually give us the feedback and the dialogue we very much need in order to develop the model, but also to develop the situation of the driver and couriers. So that's just one example of what we can do and what we ought to do. And it's easier to do those kind of things in a dialogue rather than having the what's he called, the Damocles, the Greek guy with the sword above his head hanging.
Or Damocles, yes, indeed, where it's
Damocles,
just waiting to
yes.
fall. Yeah. And I think that's a good approach. And also, I think there's probably an element in this as well that Bolt, with its sort of European history, comes at this from a perspective that it's not move fast and break things. It's actually wanting to do good and respect the social models of the that exist, particularly in Northern Europe. And to be able to respect this and develop something that's not necessarily at odds with the established way of doing things, just doing it better and doing it more efficiently.
Well, that's the whole point of it. I mean, if we can do stuff more efficiently and in a better way, then we will be successful. So of course that is what we're aiming at. But if we go back to the relationship for the gig or the platform workers, we need to be very, very careful here, because we also need to foster a profitable situation for them. Because if we cannot attract, since our model is entirely based on voluntary and people coming to us and wanting to work, we do not use shifts, we do not have any sort of obligation to you only work when you want to and how. And the only way that will work is if we provide them with attractive enough conditions.
Right.
So we need to balance both the efficiency to make sure that we are more leaner, more efficient than anyone else, and especially the old world, at the same time, but fostering good conditions and good sort of earnings possibilities for those who partner with us. So it's a balance. But so far, I think we are proving by the day, we and our colleagues in the markets, that there's ample room for improvement to actually for the platform economy truly has a role to play in the future.
Yeah, excellent, and that's good to hear. And I mean, just from the sort of Bolt has a very good sort of perspective, and just to give a bit of a viewpoint of, is there a specific type of person who is doing this kind of project work or becoming a partner with you? Is the specific individual, or is it really very varied and very diverse?
It's very diverse. And it's also very diverse when we look between different countries.
Okay.
In some countries, there is more people have a second job, and in some countries, fewer people have a second job. And in some countries, there are a lot of people who are unable to get a traditional job, and therefore would be more interested in this. And in some countries, many students see this. So it varies a lot, and not only in the type of people that choose to work with us, but also the amount they work. I would argue that very few actually have this as the major source of income.
Yeah. Okay.
Most of them have this as a supplementary source of income, and that means that they can work everything from 5 hours a week up to quite a lot of hours. Yeah. That differs a lot, and not only country by country and person by person, but also over time.
Yeah, I understand.
And also, and I think this is an argument which not all yet have understood. With the present model, very few or almost none of us operators require exclusivity. So if you, Glenn, were to start working as a food courier in Stockholm, you would most likely have all of us food delivery companies' apps installed on your phone, and you would choose which one you wanted to work for. And by doing that, you would be able to optimize your earnings, but you would also be able to optimize the time spent, because you would find more work opportunity and less the time standing still. And I think that moment, or that factor of non-exclusivity is really, really important when we come to the question, which I hope you're going to ask me soon, the one, well, why doesn't this necessarily fit into the traditional model of employment and collective agreements, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So multi-apping is a real thing, and it's something that's facilitated. So you've taken the words out of my mouth there, David.
Sorry about that.
I'm asking the question. You can now answer it.
No, but I mean, it's an argument that we quite often meet. Then, okay, but what's the problem? Why can't you just employ them? And why can't you just enter into a collective agreement? And first of all, I would say that I don't think there's one model that fits all. There will be cases of platform companies choosing to employ because they want to be able to deploy shifts and decide when and how people want, for example. Or it will be a matter of they want to secure exclusivity for a certain amount of people. So there's not one model that fits all, but the basic function of the platform economy is flexibility. And multi-apping is one of those flexible arrangements. And that makes it difficult to have that tied into to an employment contract. And as far as I can tell, I can't see that the collective agreements and the normal employment models really can accommodate that flexibility that we need. Because if it doesn't, then we will introduce red tape into the model, and that will not be beneficial for us, nor for the couriers, nor for the restaurants, nor for the consumers. I am, however, repeating that I think the only way that this can develop and evolve in a good way is going to be in dialogue. Right. So I am hoping that we will be able to have a fruitful discussions with the unions and the employment associations and others interested to see how do we make this work, because that is the real question, not how do we regulate it or how do we kill it. It's how do we make it work.
Yeah, we've come to that stage now, and I suppose the natural follow-on question from that is sort of, as a technology company and a mobility company, you take the temperature of what's happening, but also your workers. So what do they feel about this arrangement? What do they think about this flexibility, the opportunities, but also the challenges that they face in this change of work and change of lifestyle as well?
Well, I mean, it's whenever you rely on surveys, I mean, it's like asking how long is a rope? Well, that of course depends on where you cut it. But I think it's the more surveys I see, they're all pointing in the same direction. That the majority of the people interviewed, and we see a response rate of around 20 to 25 to 30% in these surveys in general. So I think they're representative. The majority say we want the freedom to choose when and how we want to work.
Yeah.
We do not want the shifts, and we do not want to be tied down. We did a rather large survey, we as an industry, with my competitors. I shan't name them because I'll take this opportunity just to talk about Bolt, but the other ones. Yeah. We did a big survey with the help of Copenhagen Economics. I mean, if you Google Copenhagen Economics, you'll find the survey there. But if I recall it correctly, I think 67% of those asked said they want to keep the freedom to choose when and how to work.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very strong statement. I mean, again, I want to repeat that I think we as platform companies have yet a responsibility to not let them float away by themselves. We have a responsibility to help them secure better working conditions. I mean, parts of what we see in terms of regulation when it comes to transparency, we definitely could be better at explaining how does our model work, how does the algorithm work. We can be better in helping them foster their possibility to be voiced against us. Insurance coverage, all of that kind of stuff. We need to work together with them. But at the moment, as I said, there's a sword hanging above us. So we need to make sure it does not fall down and hit us.
Absolutely. And if you get too close and actually do these things and help the individual couriers and partners, you run the risk of being seen as an employer. So it's going to fall back on you. So it's a kind of a negative situation which needs to be addressed to avoid the unintended consequences. It seems like, and maybe just to finish off, David, what does the future hold then in terms of the sector and also the specifics more broadly going into the digitalization of the world of work? What should we be looking out for in the next few months?
Before I answer that question, can I answer another question first?
Of course,
what about
you can.
The Nordics?
You do what you
forgot
want.
to ask me that. Now, there's one thing we really need to look out on, and that is we have just seen legislation from Brussels on minimum wages across Europe.
Yes.
We now see this, which is about defining who is who and what is what. There is something we call the Nordic model, which is basically leaving to the parties of the labor market to decide through collective agreements in Sweden, LO and Svenskt Näringsliv.
Yeah.
The way I see it, this is very much threatening that model because we're beginning to introduce boundaries. We're beginning to introduce terms and definitions that, yes, they are to be implemented in the Nordic law, in Danish and Swedish and Finnish law, but yet they are still able to be defined by the European Court of Justice. So this is Brussels moving in on a turf which previously has been protected by the Nordic governments. This is something we want to deal with ourselves. And I think that question, will the Nordic model prevail or not? And I am a little bit puzzled with how lukewarm the Swedish government has been to this question and how, what's the English word? There's no sense of urgency. There's no sense of, this is actually threatening something we've had around for the last 100 years. And I'm a little bit surprised that they're not acting on this. And I'm a little bit surprised that both Svenskt Näringsliv and LO seem also so sort of just going on as business as usual. And if I were them, I would be very, very much more concerned.
Exactly, and particularly since they were wrong-footed and basically, let's be honest, lost the battle on minimum wages because they reacted too slowly and too weakly. So that should have been the wake-up call that was necessary, you would have thought. But okay.
Well, I mean, we have asked to be introduced and be included in the consultation around this. And so far, if I understand it correctly, the government is not very interested in talking to us as the platform industry.
Right.
And that is a little bit surprising and, to be honest, a little bit sad, because I think we can actually bring in good insights to the debate, the discussion.
It should be self-interest, indeed. So
it should, shouldn't it? Yes.
The door is open and the offer is there. That's what we can do, and it will remain open, and the offer remains there every
yes, it does.
every week.
Yeah.
That's important.
But your final question was what?
That was basically about what are we going to be seeing over the next weeks and months as we go through 2022 in terms of the approach, but also how the world of work is changing. What is what is your thoughts? If I can ask you to get your crystal ball out and give us a bit of a bit of an input and a viewpoint.
We are primarily a mobility company, so we work with moving stuff back and forth, which could of course be food, but also people. And I think what I'm hoping is that we will see a more holistic approach to this. We have all seen the number of articles about e-scooters.
Yeah.
And in a way, if you read the press, you get the impression that e-scooters is the solution to all of humankind's problems, and it is of course not. So what I'm hoping is that we will see a more holistic view on this, and we start to realize that, okay, cities have a congestion problem. We need to get rid of the cars. Cities also have a challenge in transforming into a sustainable cities of the future. Yeah. How do they do this? Well, they do this, of course, by having a number of different options of moving stuff, and also using modern technology like platforms and matching to make sure that people get the optimal way of doing this. Yeah. And that is what we're doing. That's called multimodality. I think this, without being pompous, 2022 will be the year of multimodality.
Excellent. So we're seeing this this change, and again, all in the spirit of technology, improved efficiencies, and also doing more and doing better with the resources and things that we have available to us. So let's cross our fingers and keep fighting the good fight, David, on these things.
That's a very nice way to put it. Yes.
Thank you for your time today, and we'll speak
Thank you,
again
Glenn.
soon.